Hey everyone, ready to dive into something we experience every day but don't always stop to think about?
I'm game. What's on the menu for this deep dive?
Beauty. We're jumping into the mind of Roger Scruton today.
The philosopher who literally wrote the book on beauty.
Exactly. We'll be exploring his book, chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, and 8 to be precise.
Those are the chapters where he really digs into the nitty-gritty of aesthetics.
Absolutely. And get ready for some philosophical aha moments along the way because Scruton, he doesn't just tell you what to think.
He makes you question, like really question, those assumptions we have about beauty.
Like what?
Well, like the idea that beauty, it's all just in the eye of the beholder, just a matter of opinion.
Okay, so let's start there. Is beauty really just subjective? Or is there something more, objective going on?
Scruton would say it's definitely more than just a preference.
So there's something deeper at play here.
He calls it an experience that invites judgment.
Judgment.
Yeah, like a quest for meaning in a way.
So it's not just about whether we like something or not. It's about trying to understand why we find it beautiful.
Exactly. Think about being captivated by a sunset.
Okay, I'm picturing it. The colors, the vastness.
Are you thinking, oh, this sunset is useful?
Definitely not. It's more about the feeling it evokes.
Right. You're engrossed in the experience for what it is, not for what it can do for you.
It's like that feeling when you hear a piece of music that just grabs you.
And it's not because it's going to help you pay your bills.
Exactly. It's the beauty of the melody itself that pulls you in.
Scruton has this term for it. Disinterested interest.
Disinterested interest.
Yeah, finding pleasure in something for its own sake, no strings attached.
Yeah, I like that.
Like watching a bird soar through the sky.
You're not getting anything out of it, practically speaking.
But the experience itself is enjoyable. Beautiful, even.
Disinterested interest. I'm adding that to my vocabulary. Okay, so we've established beauty is more than just a feeling. But what about human beauty?
Now we're getting into interesting territory.
Right, because we all have different ideas about what makes someone beautiful.
Scruton would agree with you there.
But he'd probably push us to look beyond just those initial impressions.
He definitely would. He even touches upon the evolutionary perspective,
Survival of the fittest, attractiveness tied to,
Right. But he moves beyond that pretty quickly to explore the deeper, more philosophical side of things.
Like what?
Well, he digs into concepts like eros.
That passionate, yearning kind of love.
Yes. And he brings up Plato's idea that beauty represents this longing for something that goes beyond just the physical.
Okay, now we're getting to the good stuff. Tell me more about this yearning, this connection between beauty and something bigger than ourselves.
Imagine this.
Yeah.
You see someone, and it's not just their looks.
It's something more.
It's like catching a glimpse of their soul, their essence.
Wow, and this ties into the idea of the sacred.
Exactly. Both beauty and the sacred, they evoke this sense of awe, a feeling of reverence for something greater than ourselves.
It's like when you stare up at a starry night sky or walk into a breathtaking cathedral.
That feeling of being completely humbled.
Right, yes. Like you're in the presence of something much greater than yourself.
They both hint at something beyond our immediate understanding.
Something that sparks our curiosity and makes us want to explore further.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about beauty as more than just a feeling. We've even touched on human beauty. But let's get grounded for a second.
Grounded, how so?
Literally. Nature lovers. This one's for you because we're about to see those trees and mountains in a whole new light.
I'm intrigued. How does Scruton approach nature's beauty?
Well, you know how you'll be walking through nature and something just clicks?
Like that perfect blend of wildness and tranquility.
Exactly. Scruton says our experience of nature's beauty, it goes beyond just those stunning views.
It's about our relationship with the natural world.
Exactly.
I like that. So how does this relate to beauty?
Think about a garden, for instance.
Okay, a garden.
It's not just about randomly throwing some plants together, right?
There's an art to it.
It's about how we arrange them, the care we take in nurturing them.
We impose order on nature in a way.
And in doing so, we find beauty in that balance, that harmony.
So it's not just about the plants themselves, but our interaction with them.
It's like that aha moment you get when you rearrange a room and everything just feels right.
There's a certain satisfaction in finding that perfect balance.
Precisely. And that same principle, that sense of finding harmony, it applies to how we approach beauty in our everyday lives, even in the most mundane choices.
So we're not just talking about grand vistas and masterpieces of art.
No way. We're talking about clothes, our homes, even how we organize a bookshelf.
It's about more than just pure practicality.
Absolutely. Scruton would argue that even something as simple as a carpenter building a door frame involves aesthetic judgment.
Willie,
A door frame?
think about it. The carpenter could just make a door that functions, that opens and closes, but they're also aiming for something visually appealing, something that feels balanced and right in its proportions. So it's about finding solutions that work both practically and aesthetically.
Exactly. And that boils down to a sense of fittingness.
Fittingness, I like that.
It's not about following rigid rules. It's about finding what works, what feels right.
Like that satisfying feeling when you finally find the perfect spot for a picture frame.
It just clicks.
And that pursuit of rightness, of finding those harmonious solutions, it's all connected to our desire for beauty.
Even in the simplest things.
It's everywhere if you know where to look.
It's amazing how beauty is woven into the very fabric of our lives.
From grand landscapes to everyday objects.
And speaking of art, Scruton explores this really interesting connection between beauty, art, and you ready for this?
Hit me with it.
Erotic desire.
Ooh, now that's a topic that could spark some debate.
He uses some pretty captivating examples from the art world to make his point, too.
Like what?
He talks about paintings like Botticelli's Birth of Venus and Titian's Reclining Venuses.
Those are some pretty evocative images.
And he uses them to illustrate his ideas about erotic art.
So what's Scruton saying about erotic art? How does it relate to beauty?
He's saying that erotic art, when done well, can be both beautiful and, get this, non-concupiscent.
Concupiscent.
Meaning it captures the essence of desire and idealization without being explicit or vulgar.
So it's about capturing the beauty of longing and desire without reducing it to something purely physical.
You got it. And this is where Scruton draws a clear distinction between erotic art and pornography.
So where does pornography fit into this?
He argues that pornography, in its explicitness, actually objectifies and diminishes the beauty of its subjects.
Because it's more focused on the physical act than the emotions or ideas behind it.
Exactly. Erotic art, on the other hand, invites us to appreciate beauty in a way that respects individuality and the human experience.
So it's about more than just the body.
Way more. And we're back, diving into more of Roger Scruton's thoughts on beauty.
You know, before we jumped into this whole erotic art discussion, we were talking about how that chase for shock value.
And our maybe unhealthy obsession with kitsch?
Right. Scruton, he seems to think those things might be leading us astray, making us lose sight of what beauty really is.
And now he's connecting those ideas to this tension in art, between tradition and innovation.
Right, like can you break the mold and still create something beautiful?
Exactly. So is Scruton saying artists should just stick to the old ways of doing things? No room for shaking things up?
Not quite. He definitely acknowledges that art thrives on pushing boundaries, exploring new ideas.
So there's room for both.
He actually praises artists who challenge those conventions, who aren't afraid to experiment.
Okay, so what's the problem then? Where does it go wrong?
It's not so much about what you do, but how you do it, Scruton is really emphasizing the importance of understanding and respecting the traditions that came before.
So it's like you can't just toss out centuries of artistic tradition and expect to create something meaningful in a vacuum.
Exactly. It's like he's saying even the most groundbreaking artists, they're still having this conversation with the past.
They're building on what came before, not just tearing it all down.
He uses the term orthodoxy to talk about this idea.
Orthodoxy.
Yeah, like even when you're being innovative, you're still part of this larger artistic lineage.
You're drawing on the techniques, the styles, the big questions that your artistic ancestors grappled with.
It's like that saying, you have to know the rules before you can break them.
Right. And the breaking the rules part, that's where the innovation comes in.
Exactly. Think about someone like Picasso.
Oh, talk about breaking the rules.
Right. Cubism totally revolutionized painting, but
you can still see those influences of classical art in his work.
he was building on that foundation, not just ignoring it.
It's like you can appreciate the new without completely dismissing the old.
And Scruton gives this great example from the music world, the composer Arnold Schoenberg.
Okay, I admit classical music isn't really my forte, but I'm listening.
Well, Schoenberg, he developed this thing called the 12-tone technique.
Sounds intense.
It was radical, man. It changed how composers thought about harmony. But Scruton points out that even though Schoenberg was a total innovator, he still saw himself as working within the Western musical tradition.
So evolving it, not abandoning it altogether.
Exactly. And Scruton thinks that's important, that sense of continuity.
Okay, but let's bring this back down to earth for a sec.
Back to reality.
Well, what does this all mean for those of us who aren't artists ourselves?
That's the big question, right? Like, how do we apply these ideas to our own lives?
Right. If I'm not out there painting masterpieces or composing symphonies, why should I care about this tension between tradition and innovation?
Well, Scruton would say it's not just about creating art, it's about experiencing it.
How we engage with beauty in all its forms.
Exactly. He wants us to be more mindful, more critical, but also more open-minded when we encounter art.
So don't just scroll past a piece of art because it doesn't immediately grab you.
Yeah, like take a moment, try to see it through the artist's eyes.
What were they trying to say? How does it make you feel?
He's calling for us to approach art with disinterested interest.
There's that phrase again. I'm starting to get it.
It's about appreciating something for its own sake, without immediately judging it or letting your preconceptions cloud your judgment.
Don't be afraid to engage with art that challenges you.
Or art that might not fit neatly into your definition of beautiful.
It's about pushing past those initial reactions and really trying to see the value in something.
And you never know. You might surprise yourself with what you discover.
So we're back, still unraveling this whole beauty thing with Roger Scruton as our guide.
And last we left off, we were talking about how artists can innovate and push boundaries.
Without completely throwing tradition out the window.
Exactly. Scruton, he actually goes even deeper into that whole respecting the past idea.
Because remember that term he uses, orthodoxy.
Right, like even the most groundbreaking art, it's part of this ongoing conversation.
It's building on what came before, not just bulldozing it over.
And this next part is fascinating because he brings up those artists who deliberately, like really intentionally try to break from tradition.
Okay, I'm thinking of some pretty out there art right now.
Me too. And Scruton, he actually has this really nuanced take on it. He says sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes when artists try so hard to be different, to shock,
They might end up actually reinforcing the very traditions they're trying to escape. How so?
well, he uses this example of those avant-garde composers who threw out traditional harmony.
Okay, I'm picturing like atonal music, stuff that sounds kind of jarring, maybe even a little chaotic.
Right, and Scruton says because they were so focused on not sounding like what came before, they ended up defining their music in relation to those old rules.
So it's like they were still stuck in that world, even though they were trying to create something totally new.
Exactly, they were still having that conversation, even if it was a conversation of contradiction.
So if blindly rejecting tradition isn't the answer, what's the right approach? How can artists strike that balance between honoring the past and forging ahead into new territory?
Well, Scruton, he doesn't really give us a step-by-step guide.
No formulas.
No, but he does offer this really insightful perspective. He says that true artistic creation, it often comes from this place of, get this, humble innovation.
Humble innovation. I kind of like the sound of that.
It's like you approach tradition with this sense of respect, even reverence.
You're not just trying to be the loudest voice in the room shouting, "Look at me, I'm different."
Right. It's more about listening to the voices that came before you, understanding them.
Learning from their successes and even their failures.
And then from that place of deep understanding, from that humility, you allow your own voice to emerge.
And that voice, it might be completely new, completely different.
Or it might be surprisingly familiar, but with a fresh perspective, a new twist.
So it's not about rejecting tradition, it's about engaging with it, having that conversation.
And trusting that your own unique voice will find its place within that larger artistic lineage.
That's actually a really beautiful way to think about it.
Isn't it? And, this idea of humble innovation, I think it applies to so much more than just art.
Oh, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, think about any field, any profession, any aspect of life where you're trying to create something new.
Whether it's a new business, a new way of teaching, even just a new way of being in the world.
Exactly. We can all benefit from approaching those endeavors with that same sense of humble innovation,
Respecting the foundations that have been laid before us.
but also having the courage to build something new, something that reflects our own unique vision.
That's such an important reminder. And you know what? I think it perfectly captures the essence of what we've been talking about this entire time. Beauty.
There it is. We've come full circle.
Because beauty, it's not just about things that are pleasing to the eye.
It's about that sense of rightness, of harmony, of something that resonates with us on a deeper level.
It's about finding that sweet spot between the familiar and the unknown, the traditional and the innovative.
And it's everywhere if we know how to look for it.
So keep exploring, keep questioning, and most importantly, keep that sense of wonder alive.
Because the world is full of beauty, just waiting to be discovered.
And on that note, We're wrapping up this deep dive into the captivating world of beauty, as seen through the insightful eyes of Roger Scruton.
Until next time.